It's finally Friday. It's Friday, Friday.
Thank God it's
Welcome back to the Friday Show, presented by the Match Series, the Mid-Atlantic Thoroughbred Championships. This weekend is the final round, and a filly and a mare will do battle for the overall championship. I'm Scott Jagow, along with Ray Paulick. We're glad to have you with us. Ray, there's a lot to unpack. It's been a busy week. In fact, I think we need a new set of whipping rules. And I'm not talking about on the racetrack. I'm talking about the horse racing industry got its butt whipped across the country this week. In California, by the governor there. In Illinois, by a major corporation called Churchill Downs. And then in Florida, by a court of appeals. And we're going to get to all that. Let's start in California. The Santa Anita meet gets underway today. People have to be on pins and needles after what happened last spring. And California's governor is not helping the situation. He made several comments, and you wrote about it.
Yeah, Governor Gavin Newsom sat down with reporters from the New York Times, and he made comments about horse racing that sounded like they were coming from PETA or some animal rights group, completely overlooking, number one, the thousands and thousands of jobs that are involved in horse racing, and number two, the tremendous strides that California racing has made in the area of safety and welfare since last winter and spring, when all of those deaths at Santa Anita were such a national story. Santa Anita made changes, Del Mar made changes. They had the safest meeting in their history. And the California Horse Racing Board, over which the governor sits, rubber stamped or adopted a lot of safety measures. And in many ways, his racing board is leading the nation in some of these reforms.
It sounded to me like some of those sports analysts on ESPN when they're talking about certain teams or games, and it's clear, it's very obvious that they haven't actually watched the games. It drives me crazy. And this is one of those situations too. Didn't you see that Del Mar had 0 fatalities? And then what's more astonishing is that he talked about the conflict of interest issue with the California Horse Racing Board, and we talked about that, where you have people who are owners of racehorses with certain trainers, and they're regulating them, which is a problem. But then he has the audacity to put a woman on the CHRB who was found guilty of conflict of interest issues in another realm, and you wrote about that as well.
Yeah, it's a legitimate question. Should people regulate an industry when they have investment in that industry? And there are owners and other people involved on the California Horse Racing Board that do have investments in the game. But Wendy Mitchell, who was his latest appointment, served on a very powerful commission in California for more than 5 years, the California Coastal Commission, which makes land use decisions about coastal development. She was on that commission while working as a consultant for developers and others, and she was found guilty in a San Diego court trial of having ex parte communications on at least 22 different occasions. There were charges of more than that, but the judge said on 22 occasions she had these communications with developers that you can only conclude would compromise the integrity of her decision making on the commission. At least that's the conclusion I make. And why on earth would this governor put someone like that on a commission that he's trying to clean up, in his own words?
Again, conflict of interest issues, which is exactly the problem with the CHRB. It's mind-boggling. But serious question here, though, Ray. How big of a threat is California's governor to the sport of horse racing?
Well, I hope that there are people close to the governor who went to him after his reckless statements and said, "Look, here's what's really going on in California. Maybe you should study these issues a little more carefully before you start making these accusations." So, I hope it's a moment that he can learn from. But if not, it's going to be a long tenure with him as governor. Well,
let's ask that question. We have a poll on the website, PaulickReport.com. Does Governor Newsom pose a real threat to horse racing in California? Let us know your thoughts at PaulickReport.com. Ray, let's move on to Illinois, where last week the Illinois Racing Board showed some bravado in the face of Churchill Downs Incorporated, saying, hey, now wait a minute, you might not get your racing dates at Arlington. We decide that if you're not going to cooperate here with a license for a casino, which we thought you were going to do. But then this week, the IRB backed off and gave them all their racing dates. Who are they to blame here?
This was kind of a puzzler to me. I thought the Illinois Racing Board was going to put some conditions on the license or on the dates for next year. They had to award all of the dates for next year. We know that Hawthorne is rebuilding and will not have a winter spring meeting because they're putting a casino in. Fairmount Park is putting in a casino. Arlington, for whatever reason, and they wouldn't say specifically why, are not putting a casino at Arlington. This is damaging to the horsemen, and it's damaging to the state of Illinois. And the Illinois Racing Board should have said, no, you're not going to get the dates without some conditions. And they could have said there's a thing called recapture, which takes money out of the purse account because of some our old law involving full card simulcasting. They could have put that money into purses, but purses, without the way things stand right now, purses in Illinois are going to be roughly $130,000 a day next year at Arlington Park. Churchill Downs in Kentucky has $105,000 allowance races right now because of gaming. Why Churchill Downs doesn't want gaming at Arlington Park is still a mystery.
And you didn't get any answers from their attorney at this meeting. I mean, he came off as a lawyer's lawyer. He wouldn't answer any questions. He sounded like a robot. He sounded like a soulless corporation is what he sounded like. And so we didn't get any answers. There wasn't any humanity in that meeting. And it just feels like, you can point the finger at Churchill Downs, obviously, and a lot of people do, but you really got to point the finger at the regulators, at the racing board here, because there are a lot of creative things they could have done to, put some pressure on Churchill Downs to at least explain what the heck they are planning to do, because we don't know at this point. And, I guess this is one of the issues horse racing has in the sleeping with the enemy, I guess I'll call it. If you rely on casino money, this is the kind of stuff that can happen to you. I mean, we've seen states try to take it away, and in this situation, you have a corporation who runs the Kentucky Derby, who is yanking the thing out from under you after you thought you were going to have it. But that is the slippery slope that is relying on another gambling business to support your gambling business.
Yeah, it really is. And Churchill Downs made a commitment to have racing next year, and in 2021, the attorney Brad Blackwell said, we never said we wouldn't race beyond 2021. That's what was contained in the press release when they said they weren't going to pursue a casino license. But he didn't really say we would have racing after 2021. I think everybody in Illinois is viewing Churchill Downs with a lot of skepticism, cynicism, whatever, because why wouldn't they put a casino in there? Do they really think the state General Assembly is going to give them a better tax break or take money away from the horsemen so that Churchill Downs, the corporation, can profit more from a casino at Arlington Park? I don't think that's going to happen. So I think most people think that this is probably long-term a real estate play for Churchill Downs, and that Hawthorne will be the only remaining racetrack in the Chicago area for thoroughbred racing a few years down the road. That seems to be the conclusion of a lot of people.
Maybe we should have a second poll question. How big of a threat is Churchill Downs Incorporated to horse racing in Illinois? Right now, it seems like a serious problem, although you do have some positive developments at Hawthorne and Fairmount Park. But let's move on to Florida, where Churchill Downs Incorporated, again, is in the news. The issue is they got a casino at Calder because of their horse racing license. Now, a court of appeals has said they can actually tie their casino to Hialeah? Are you kidding me? Is this real?
Yeah, we know that Florida is the land of loopholes in the pari-mutuel wagering business. We've seen two horse races with horses jogging down a dirt path, deemed legal horse races for the purposes of quarter horse tracks opening up card rooms and simulcasting. And now Churchill Downs, following the lead of a dog track, bought a highlight permit, and they've attached that to the Calder Casino. And they asked the Division of Pari-Mutuel Wagering, the state's division, to allow them to marry those two, the casino to the highlight license. And they've opened up highlight in May of this year. It's an exciting game, Scott, as I'm sure you're aware. And this will permit them to close their racing operations. And they no longer operate racing there, but they lease Calder to the Stronach Group. They have since 2014. The lease expires in 2020. It runs as the Gulfstream Park West meeting, and there's no guarantee when that lease expires there will be any more racing at Calder. It's not just racing. There's stabling there, and I think if I were a betting man, I'd say at the end of 2020 there won't be any more racing at Calder. They'll develop that property.
Well, from the soulless perspective of Churchill Downs Incorporated, this makes total financial sense if you can get away with it, because a racetrack is a huge chunk of property. It costs a lot of money to operate a racetrack. A highlight for Anton is just like a building. And of course, highlight is, all above board as a sport. There could be no way to fix or cheat in highlight. I mean, it's pathetic. It's a mockery of a sham or whatever. I mean, the fact that they're going down this path, I don't know how these people sleep at night. I really don't. The Florida regulators included, the people who run that corporation. I just don't know how you go to bed having done these things.
Yeah, they when they leased the track to the Stronach Group, I think they pretty much gave up on horse racing. After that, they tore down the grandstand. They put up a tent, so when there's live racing, that's all there is there. It's really sad. And somebody might say, well, why do you even need Calder? I think 12 months of racing at Gulfstream Park is just too much. They need time to refresh the turf course, to feel like when they open the championship meet in December at the end of the Gulfstream Park West meeting, it's a new meeting, it's a new year. If you have 12 months racing at Gulfstream Park, I think it really hurts the state, it hurts the breeding industry. There's a lot of downside to it. But Churchill Downs as a corporation, they don't really care about what it does to breeders and owners. Their fiduciary responsibility is to their shareholders, and they've said that many times.
Just in this episode of the Friday Show, we're talking about 3 different states and 3 different situations. You got the governor in California, you got Churchill Downs in Illinois, you got the regulators turning their head in Florida and the courts. So this, again, goes back to that issue of national oversight. Racing needs a reset because the state-by-state patchwork is slowly dissolving the sport, and that's a problem.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that's happening is the core business of horse racing no longer seems to be horse racing. It's dependent on the revenue from slot machines, casinos, historical horse racing. There's really only a couple of states remaining where it's standing on its own without that additional help. California being one of the states, and frankly, in those states, it's struggling because the other states are getting a lot of money from slot machines for now. We don't know how long that will last. Look at the example in Calder, with Calder, where the rug was pulled out from under the horsemen. So the tail is wagging the dog here, and that's not a good thing.
And it's heartbreaking too, because of course, because of all the jobs that are on the line in these situations. And when you go to the racetrack, you go to Keeneland on a fall day, or Saratoga, or Del Mar. I mean, it's crowded. The betting handle's been pretty good in a lot of scenarios. And it's a beautiful day, and it's a beautiful sport. And it's just hard to watch what's happening around it. So give me something positive.
Well, with the opening of Santa Anita, we can say that the Breeders' Cup is just over a month away. How about that?
Yeah, that's going to be fun. Fun couple of days of racing. Looking forward to that. Okay, that's going to do it for this edition of the Friday Show, presented by the Match Series at Monmouth Park this weekend, the final round. There's going to be a battle in one of the races for the overall championship, so don't miss it. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time.